Welcome back to my channel, fellow gardeners. Now, I want to talk about the aster, and actually I've just planted these asters here and also uprooted some asters that were in my garden and in the wrong area. So I have a lot of babies. So today I thought we could look at the aster plant and also do a propagation so I can show you how you can have so many asters as stock in your garden. Now, the beautiful thing about the asters is that there's over 170 species of asters and so many different types of variety. This one I particularly have is known as the New York Aster, and we'll put all the names below. But the beautiful thing about it, it's such a showstopper. Now, the beauty again is, as I traveled last month to the UK, is I noticed that the aster is a fall plant. And the thing is about it, it's usually when all the other plants are sort of going into dormancy, the aster always stands upright. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Alice and I'm the Red Soil Gardener. Now, this is my aster plant, and I just love asters because they come in so many different colors. This is a white variety, and what I had before in my garden down there was actually the lilac and the purple variety. Now, the thing is about it, it is a herbaceous perennial. That means every year it's going to sprout out. Once it does take rooting, it becomes a drought tolerant plant. Now, the thing about asters, it is drought tolerant, but it does like a bit of moisture in the soil in order for it to bloom and survive. Basically, it is a very low maintenance plant. Now, as I mentioned, is that I went to Britain last month and all I just saw was asters, different varieties. I was going crazy. But the whole thing about asters, why they bloom during the fall, is that they respond to shorter days, and this is where they become fall plants, big showstoppers, amazing colors. Now, if I look at this aster, the actual Latin meaning of aster is a star. So if you look at these lovely flowers, is that they do resemble a star. But again, this is the beauty about asters actually blooming in fall, is that they're one of the few plants, well, the last plants, that actually do maintain themselves, and they're good for pollinators, and the pollinators can have at least, they're able to get their food from the flower, because while the other plants do go into dormancy. So the other thing about asters is they're good for borders. If you plant it along your borderline in your flower bed. The other way I would use it is in containers, or even later is that they're great for cut flowers. So once the bloom does get bigger, and instead of deadheading, all I would do is actually cut these stems and have them in a flower arrangement in my sitting room. Now, the beautiful thing about asters is, first of all, they love full sun. So once you do have a garden with a lot of sun, is do plant them there. Now, the thing about asters is that they can actually tolerate light shade. Now, with light shade, they wouldn't bloom that much, but especially in countries where you do get hotter climates, I would actually have it in lighter shade, but it's okay for as long as the blooms are still there. Now, what is the water requirement for the asters? As I mentioned earlier, asters do like moist soil, but they are drought tolerant. For as long as your aster has the moist soil, it will flower all the time. However, if you're in a situation that you do have clay soil, do add a bit of compost in it, and so that it's well draining, because the problem with asters, they don't like their roots getting waterlogged. They do get root rot if that is the situation. but with drainage and a moist soil, they'll flourish. So we've talked about sun, we've talked about water, and we've also talked about soil. Now the thing is that what is very important I have to emphasize is that you have to choose the right location for your asters. Now my purple asters that I had at the bottom of the garden, because I had so much tree foliage, they never really took off. I got one bloom here, one bloom there. So what I've done is actually go there and uproot it, and then decided this time I will get it right and actually put it in full sun. Now the thing is about that is when I did uproot the plant is I realized, why don't I show you how to do a propagation, because with all these lovely foliage I have and I didn't get the flower, is I can show you how to do a propagation through division, and actually you end up with so many babies that you can actually scatter these asters in your garden. Now what I'm going to do is just put this there and just bring my bowl, which I've been trying to preserve it in water. Now the thing is that propagation with asters, you can either do seed propagation because they do self-seed. However, sowing the seeds does take longer. The other way you could actually do asters is actually do a stem cutting and use that for propagation purposes. And we've done this like we've done with salvias and daisies, but you could either go that way. Now the other way, what I would prefer, which is much quicker, is actually do division. Now division means that, let me put this here, is when you do get your aster plant like this, is what happens is you get shooting from the base of the plant. So once you look at your aster and you see all these little shooting, again, as I said, this is what you propagate. But it is important that every 3 to 4 years, this is what we recommend, is do uproot your asters and carry out your division, because it's a way of also regenerating the plant and giving it more strength. So with these ones of my purple asters, I didn't feel so bad uprooting them, because now with these clumps is actually it'll work out better because they'll have room to grow and also they get regenerated. Another thing is, as these asters have been sitting in your garden, and again we're talking about uprooting them every 3 to 4 years, what happens is that the stem bit, as it gets older, it does get woody and it will die off. So again, another reason why you should actually do uproot your asters and carry out your division in order to regenerate, so that in the end you get more blooms for the next season. So now let's go into propagation, as I mentioned earlier. So all these, which I'll put down, are from my clump of purple asters. So here they are, all of this, and I've actually managed to get so many babies, and I've got another batch. And so what I want to do is actually with these batches is actually plant them in the garden so that they too can rejuvenate and give me more asters. So all these are asters, babies, and so basically I'm going to plant them in my garden, and I will plant them as a clump because some of them are actually attached to the rhizome, and I think here I've got enough plants to actually make a nice aster garden. I may have to just separate this one, and separation is actually, well, you can pull them apart, but here we go. So that's one batch. I think I'll plant these ones together, just like that. This one, I may separate it by just pulling it like that and pulling this one. So let's go and just put some of these in the area that I had actually chosen. and then we'll come back and talk about the overwinter preparation for asters. I have my asters. I'm going to plant them here next to my shatsu daisies, and it's going to be just a lovely white patch, and also with the daisies. So let's do it. Okay. So once I've planted them, I'm going to water them, and once my little babies start growing, I'll wait for the rains, which we're expecting next week. And as it grows, I might even divide it further. Now, the thing about asters, let's look at winter. So we're looking at fall where there's in full bloom. Now, what happens towards the end of fall is the temperature starts to drop and it starts getting cooler. Now, in order for you to start your overwinter preparation, what you have to do is actually wait for the end of the blooming season. Once the blooming season is at the end, then you can start your overwinter preparation. Now, what happens is that because asters are actually they're actually quite hardy and they can withstand cold temperatures. Normally, unless you live in a warmer climate or in an area that you do get freezing, the soil freezing up, but in a normal temperature from zone, let's say 4 to zone 9, asters are quite hardy. Now your overwinter preparation is after the blooming season, cut it down to about 2 inches above the soil level. And once you've cut it down, what I would do in order to insulate it is cover it with mulch. Now, you could either use straw or you could use organic matter like leaves and make sure it's all covered. And this should be enough to be able to protect the roots over the winter period. As your plant does go into dormancy, is that try not to water it too much, because basically what the plant is doing is conserving its energy and giving all the energy to the rooting structure in order to keep it alive. Now, so basically during dormancy, not too much water. Even if you do have your asters in a container, do bring them in and put them in a garage somewhere where it's frost free or let's say freeze free. And then as it goes along, just make sure that the soil is slightly moist to keep it going. But basically during dormancy, less water. Once your asters are on the ground in your garden and spring does come up, you will see those little shooting coming up. But what I would do is actually go to the foliage, clean it up, and just let it, maybe put some mulch on top of it, and let it spring back into action. Now, what happens is it will start blooming. Asters bloom from spring right down to fall, and they'll just give you these abundance of flowers. But if you want in midsummer to get more blooms, I would actually just take it and then just nip it. And again, you will get that abundance of blooms springing out. Now, if your asters were actually kept in your garage or your basement for overwinter storage, start bringing it out slowly. So it's called hardening. So you bring it out and maybe give it maybe 2 hours sun in a sunny spot, but make sure the soil is moist. But then take it back in and slowly reintroduce it into your garden. You don't want to be in a situation that you just bring it out and then you get transplant shock. But once again, what I'd like to emphasize, because there's so many different varieties of asters, is some of them could be a bit more cold tolerant. It's always good to ask your nursery the requirement for that plant for overwinter preparation. Now, the only thing I would like to emphasize is that because you have this abundance of foliage, is what happens is when you do water, do try to water the soil, because what happens is that with this, and some of them do get quite full, is that you could get an attack of mildew, which would attack your, if you see this powdery substance on your leaves, that could be mildew. So always try to water the soil, not the leaves, because mildew does come up when there's a lot of humidity on the leaves. Other than that, if you do get mildew, do get soapy water and do clean it up with that. It's not a big problem. But other than that, all I wish is that do enjoy your asters this fall. And now that you know how to propagate them, do have abundance in your garden. And don't forget to like and share and press that notification button, and also subscribe to our channel. And don't forget that to check my Instagram. I'm always putting photos there, and anything that happens in the week, I do post that. And don't forget to check us on Facebook, and do leave your comments. I do love getting your comments, and anything you'd love to share, do put it on the comment, and then we can actually get other people to participate. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day and enjoy your asters.